Life in the city is never dull, packed with customs and traditions that can really surprise those not from around there. Now, what if I told you there are some things and places in Moscow so captivating that they've got people everywhere talking, urging them to visit and see for themselves? Let's delve into these astonishing things captured in Moscow. 10. Ismo Kremlin in Moscow. The Kremlin makes you think of those famous walls and towers in Moscow's Red Square, but there's a lesser-known one that's just as interesting. Tucked away near the Serebriano-Vinogradny Pond in northeast Moscow is the Ismo Kremlin, a place that feels like you've stepped into a Russian fairy tale. The Ismo Kremlin, finished in 2007, isn't your usual fortress. It's more like a cultural park, bursting with colors and crafts that give off an old-time Russian vibe. Walking around, you'll see the Romanov family's emblem everywhere, and there's even a quirky pink statue of Lenin that gets people talking. This Kremlin is a busy spot with museums that are out of the ordinary. You've got one for Russian folk art, another all about bread, and there's even a vodka museum. They've also built a wooden replica of Tsar Alexei Mikhailovich's summer palace where you can eat traditional Russian food. And the Church of St. Nicholas there is the tallest wooden church around, standing proud at 151 feet. Right next door is the Izmailovo district's open-air market, a historic place that's been around since the 17th century. Linked to the Kremlin by a charming wooden bridge, this market feels like its own little town. You can wander through lanes lined with covered stalls, selling souvenirs and handicrafts in the vernissage section, and find all sorts of old-school stuff in the flea market area. Visiting the Izmailovo Kremlin is like going back in time. It's super popular in summer and on weekends, but it's also nice when it's quieter. Getting there is easy, with the Partizanskaya metro station and the Izmailovo stop on the Moscow Central Circle line nearby. It's buzzing during the day and beautifully lit at night, offering a cool mix of history, culture, and market life with a fun Russian twist. Every place has its charm, but this spot is particularly captivating. I'd love to visit it myself, and I bet others would too. It seems like a great place to spend a holiday or explore as a tourist. 9. Peter the Great statue. High up in Moscow's skyline stands the huge statue of Peter the Great, standing on a pile of ships, holding a scroll, looking like the powerful ruler of the seas he was. But even though it's meant to be impressive, a lot of people think it's one of the ugliest things they've ever seen. This giant statue is 322 feet tall, making it the 8th tallest in the world. But it hasn't really won over the locals or tourists, who often call it an eyesore instead of a proper tribute to the famous Russian leader. There's a funny story behind it too. Some say the statue was first made to honor Christopher Columbus on the 500th anniversary of his voyage. The sculptor, Zurab Tsereteli, couldn't get anyone in the US to take it, so he ended up giving it to Moscow with a little help from his friend, the city's ex-mayor. So for the 300th anniversary of the Russian Navy, which Peter the Great started, they put up this statue in 1997. Adding to the irony, Peter the Great didn't really like Moscow. He preferred St. Petersburg, which makes the statue's location a bit odd. Some people have suggested moving it to St. Petersburg, but the folks there don't want it. This big statue is near Bolotny Island, and you can see it from all over, standing out against the skyline next to Museon Park and the Prechistenskaya embankment. Even if it's not everyone's favorite, it's a spot with a great view, especially from a boat on the Moskva River, where you can really get how big it is and see other important places in Moscow at the same time. Now, thinking about the statue itself, I wonder why it catches so much flack. Art's pretty subjective, right? What someone might mount proudly on their wall could look like an odd choice to someone else. But personally, I don't think this grand statue is all that bad, unless there's some wild backstory we're not aware of. But hey, that's just a light-hearted thought. 8. Lenin's Mausoleum. In the center of Moscow's Red Square, there's a unique place called Lenin's Mausoleum. It's here that Vladimir Lenin, the brain behind the Bolshevik Revolution, lies preserved, not buried in the ground as he wished, but almost like a mummy in a red and black tomb. Lenin passed away on January 21st, 1924, and I bet he never thought he'd end up on display. He wanted a simple burial, But that's not what happened. His body was first put in a wooden box for people to see, and lots of folks sent messages asking for his body to be kept for the future. So they built a stronger, permanent place for him, finished in 1930, where he's been ever since. This place was made really sturdy, even strong enough to be safe from Nazi attacks during World War II, and Lenin's body was once moved to Siberia for safety. Keeping Lenin looking alive is a big job. A team, once led by Ilya Zbarsky and his son Boris, works hard on this. They use a lot of care to make sure he doesn't decay, keeping him in a special controlled glass case, giving him treatments to stop any rotting or color changes. Lenin's mausoleum is more than just his final resting spot. It's a place full of history's complexities, mixing political symbols with the strange truth of his preservation. Visitors can quickly see Lenin's body, a silent way to connect with a major historical figure who's kept in a grand tomb of marble and labradorite. Even though there's less money now for things like getting him new suits, Lenin's preserved body continues to draw attention and make people think. It's a quiet testimony to a past time, sitting there on Red Square. 7. Children. Victims of adult vices sculptural composition in Moscow. In the heart of Moscow, there's a sculpture called Children, Victims of Adult Vices, revealed on September 2nd, 2001 by artist Mikhail Shemyakin. The main part shows two kids, a boy and a girl, blindfolded and cut off from the dark figures around them. These figures represent the bad stuff adults do that can mess up children's lives. The sculptures start with war, a scary figure in gas mask and armor holding a bomb like it's a toy. Then there's sadism, looking like a rhinoceros in butcher's clothes. Ignorance is shown as a donkey, symbolizing stupidity. Addiction looks like a creepy figure out of a horror movie, holding drugs. Poverty is an old lady begging. There's also a birdman for exploitation, trapping kids in terrible work conditions. Unconsciousness is shown as a guillotine, a sharp reminder of not paying attention. Alcoholism is a figure drowning in a barrel of booze. Theft is a sneaky pig with a bag of money. Prostitution is a toad, looking gross and twisted. And pseudo-scholarship is a guy pretending to be smart, but actually fooling people. Set in a busy part of Moscow, Shemyakin's sculpture is a quiet but bold message to think about how adult actions can harm kids. It's a powerful scene that puts the spotlight on the struggle between keeping innocent and the dark influences of adult mistakes. It's amazing how this sculpture conveys such a powerful message. It makes me think about learning to create something similar, maybe placing it in my city's square to spread a strong message too. And for any adult who sees this and recognizes their own flaws, it's a clear signal that change is needed to positively influence the next generation. 6. Bunker 42. Deep under the busy streets of Moscow, you'll find something surprising. Bunker 42. This isn't just any underground spot. Think of it as a secret base from the Cold War, tucked away under the city, steeped in both history and mystery. After the Soviet Union tested its nuclear bombs, the people who designed Bunker 42 figured out that digging down about 165 feet was the perfect depth to avoid a nuclear attack. It's fascinating to think about the huge effort to build this massive bunker right under Moscow, all the while keeping it hidden from enemies and spies. The goal was crucial: keep everything completely secret. Located in the Tagansky area, very close to the Kremlin, Bunker 42 served as a quick getaway or command center for the top Soviet leaders. It was completed in 1956, but luckily, its ominous purpose was never needed. It turned into a control center for managing nuclear weapons in the air until things changed in 1986. Now, Bunker 42 has transformed into a museum, a window to the past era of the Cold War. It's more than just a history lesson. It's an invitation to step into a time when the threat of nuclear war was very real. Open anytime, it welcomes anyone keen to explore its hidden depths, where the past and secrets come together in an underground story from another time. Isn't it wild to think that a place once super secret like Bunker 42 is now a museum? It's kind of like turning Area 51 into a tourist spot. If that ever happened, I'd be super curious to check it out. But for now, Bunker 42 is the one open for visits. Thinking of going there for a holiday or just to satisfy your curiosity? It would be quite the trip. 5. The Monument to the Conquerors of Space. If you love space stuff, you've got to see the Monument to the Conquerors of Space in Moscow. It's a huge structure that looks like it's shooting into the sky, celebrating Soviet space victories. Built in 1964, this giant, made of titanium, stands tall at 110 meters, tilting at a 77-degree angle, just like a rocket launching into space. Right outside the All-Russia Exhibition Center, which used to be called VDNKH, this monument is easy to spot in the northeast part of Moscow, near the Prospect Mira. Just get off at the VDNKH subway station and you're right in the thick of Russia's space pride. But this monument isn't standing all alone. It's part of a big space-themed area. At its base, there's the Memorial Museum of Cosmonautics, packed with space stories. Around the area, there's also the Cosmos Pavilion, streets named after space pioneers, and Cosmonauts Alley, where you can see statues of the Soviet space legends. The idea for this monument came after Sputnik 1 orbited Earth, leading to a big contest in 1958 with over 350 designs sent in. The winners were sculptor A.P. Fadish Krandievsky and architects Ann Kolchin and M.O. Barsh. They got it ready for the 7th anniversary of Sputnik's journey. Inside the monument's base is the Space Museum, which got a big update to become an even cooler tribute to Soviet space journeys. The monument, with a rocket on top, looks like it's leaving a trail in the sky, and it's all thanks to Korolyov's idea to use titanium. At the bottom, there's a statue of Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, a big name in space theory, watching over this place that celebrates how humans reached for the stars. So, when you're in Moscow, don't miss this amazing monument. It's a powerful symbol of human dreams and space adventures, mixing history, art, and the endless mystery of space in one incredible spot. 4. The Zar Bell. Let me tell you about a giant piece of Russian history, the Zar Bell, a massive bronze bell that's famous all over the world. It was made between 1733 and 1735 when Empress Anna Ioannovna was in charge. Two famous bell makers, Ivan Motorin and his son Mikhail, created it. This bell is huge, weighing 202 tons, about 6.14 meters tall, and has a width of 6.6 meters. It's not just a big bell, it's a giant work of art made of metal. The story of how this bell was made is full of ups and downs. It happened in Moscow, near the Ivan the Great Bell Tower. Making the bell was tough. There were skilled craftsmen like Vasily Kobelev and Pyotr Galkin from St. Petersburg who did the detailed carving work, showing royal stories and protective spirits, all under the guidance of Fyodor Medvedev, a master who learned his craft in Italy. But making the bell was far from easy. The first attempt in 1734 went wrong because of leaks and a big fire that destroyed the support structure. After Ivan Motorin died in 1735, his son Mikhail had to continue alone. They finally made the bell in 1735, but then another fire in 1737 damaged it, breaking off a big piece weighing 11.5 tons. Trying to lift the bell out of its casting hole was a failure at first, and it stayed there for a long time. It wasn't until 1836 that Auguste Montferrand, a French architect working in St. Petersburg, managed to get the bell out of the ground. He faced problems too, but he eventually got it right and set the bell up where it still sits today, telling the history of Russia without making a sound. The Tsar bell is decorated with pictures of Tsar Alexei Mikhailovich and Empress Anna Ioannovna, along with fancy designs, heavenly figures, and important writings. But it's more than just pretty. It's a symbol of how people keep going, creating amazing things no matter what challenges come their way. A big shout out to everyone who had a hand in creating this magnificent piece. It's so disheartening when hard work seems to fall apart, but seeing the bell standing now is a solid nod to their dedication. It's an impressive mark of their hard work and creativity. 3. A monument to Malchik, a stray dog who lived in Moscow. At the center of Moscow, in Mendeleyevskaya station, there's a touching story about Malchik, a tough little black street dog. His life changed from being a common sight in the subway to becoming a meaningful symbol for the city. Malchik, which means little boy in Russian, wasn't just any stray dog. He was part of the place, a friendly face to those who worked at the station, rode the trains, and ran the nearby stores, who all made sure he never went hungry. However, in December 2001, something terrible happened. Malchik's quiet life was ruined by Yuliana Romanova. In a frightening moment, Romanova attacked Malchik with her Staffordshire Terrier, taking his life as the people around could only watch in shock. This awful incident might have been forgotten in the busy city life, but Moscow felt a deep loss for Malchik. Driven by anger and sadness, people demanded justice, even though it took a while. The relentless work of reporter Irina Ozionaya from Izvestia helped bring attention to Romanova, a model with a troubled history. She tried to act unbothered and even moved to Spain, but her past with animals and her mental health issues came to light, showing a sad and complicated story. Justice took its course, and Romanova ended up in court, where she was sentenced to a year of psychiatric care. But the real story is about how Malchik is remembered. Moscow came together not just for him, but for all the stray dogs in the city. Out of this shared sadness and thinking came something beautiful, a bronze statue named Compassion, set up in February 2007, right where Malchik died. This statue means more than just remembering him. It's a spot in the city that touches people's hearts, where anyone passing by, whether they're going to work, catching a train, or just love dogs, can stop for a moment, touch Malchik's metal head, and think about the many unseen lives in the city. Located in Mendeleyevskaya Station on the Serpuchovsko-Timiryazevskaya line in the Tverskoy district, Compassion is not just a tribute to Malchik, but to all the stray animals in Moscow. It's a reminder of our common feelings of life, loss, and our ability to care for others in a big city. 2. Monument of Yuri Gagarin. From the bustling streets of Moscow to the quiet wilderness of Sakhalin, Russia is dotted with monuments to Yuri Gagarin, the pioneering space traveler who became the first person to orbit Earth. Even after 60 years, his space journey is still a huge point of pride, showing off Soviet creativity and marking a big win in the space race with the United States. Gagarin's famous 108-minute flight did more than just put his name among the stars. It also became a symbol of Soviet success and power, kindling a deep pride similar to their World War II victory. Since that epic day on April 12, 1961, Gagarin has been celebrated all over Russia with various memorials. Even while Gagarin was alive, monuments were made in his honor. In 1964, Moscow revealed a titanium pillar dedicated to Soviet space heroes, topped with a piece featuring Gagarin. Then, in 1967, they set up Cosmonauts Alley with bronze busts of Gagarin and other space explorers. By 1980, a huge titanium statue of Gagarin was erected, standing 42 meters tall on a base that looks like rocket flames and weighing 12 tons. This statue, along with others around Russia, like in Star City and the Baikonur launch site, keeps telling the story of Gagarin's never-ending journey. After Gagarin died in a jet crash in 1968, his memory was honored in key places related to his life and death, including his burial site near the Kremlin wall and the spot where he tragically died. But Gagarin's influence isn't just in the big cities. It stretches to distant corners of Russia, with statues in places like Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk and at Baikonur Cosmodrome, showing that his legacy goes beyond our planet. To mark where he came back from space, near the Volga River, there's an obelisk and a statue celebrating Gagarin's space mission, with a theme park opened for the 60th anniversary of his flight. These tributes are spread across Russia like stars in the sky, honoring the man who, for a moment, brought the world together in wonder. This monument, especially in Moscow, is a must-see, and it's incredibly inspiring, especially for anyone dreaming of space or aspiring to be an astronaut. 1. Borodino Panorama. In the heart of Moscow, there's an incredible place that takes you back to 1812, to the intense Battle of Borodino through a huge painting. This artwork, made by Franz Roubaud, a Russian artist trained in Munich, stretches almost 380 feet and shows the fierce fight between the French and Russian armies. That day, over 250,000 soldiers battled it out, with around 70,000 of them not making it. This painting, created by Roubaud, Moscow is more than just an old picture. It's like a time machine. It's got sound effects of the battle that make you feel like you're right there in the thick of it. They opened this panorama in 1912, 100 years after the actual battle, and it's part of a big trend from the 19th century when artists all over Europe and America were making these massive paintings that showed big historical battles in detail. But this place isn't just about the art. It's also a reminder of the real cost of war. There's a mass grave memorial close by for the 300 Russian soldiers who died in that fight. Visiting here is not just about seeing a piece of art, it's about remembering the courage and loss of those who fought. Even though this kind of giant panoramic art isn't as common now, and we've lost many over time, there are still some out there around the world. Like the Rakławicz Panorama in Wrocław, Poland, showing the 1794 Battle of Rakławicz, the Panorama 1453 in Istanbul, Turkey, about the fall of Constantinople, and the October War Panorama in Damascus, Syria. Each one gives a glimpse into the grand and immersive world of panoramic art. I think it's a brilliant way to combine art and history into one powerful piece. We just wrapped up looking into that astonishing event caught on tape in Moscow, one that's got people all over the globe doing double takes. I'm really keen to know what you think about this puzzling spectacle. Jump into the comments and let's kick off a chat about this incident that's got everyone's attention, leaving us all amazed and wondering.